So hello and welcome to Ewe Sew You. My name's Zoe and this is my channel all about the crafty bits and pieces I get up to. I knit, I sew, I spin on a drop spindle, I dabble in weaving from time to time and anything else that takes my crafty fancy. But today we are working on a crochet project together, so grab a brew, put your feet up and let's get started. Welcome back to any returning viewers, and to any new viewers a very warm welcome to you. Now, as I mentioned in the opening to this video, today we're looking at a crochet project together. It's a very simple project that you can use to make coasters, placemats, trivets, pot holders, dishcloths, that kind of thing. Obviously think about the fibre that you're using. If you're going to be making a dishcloth or a face cloth, use cotton, or at least I would use cotton, I wouldn't use wool. I've used wool for this particular project and I've made a coaster. But just by changing the size of the project, so how long you keep going for, you can actually change the purpose of the project. You can even turn it into a basket, and I will explain how to do that whilst I'm showing you how to make it. I won't show you, but I will tell you how to do it. So grab a hook, grab your yarn, and let's get going. Okay, so I've got my yarn here. This is Jamieson & Smith in the shade Fuchsia. It's chunky yarn. Yeah, real Shetland chunky, 100% Shetland wool. It's 120 metres, 131 yards to 100 grams. It's recommending 4.5mm knitting needles to knit it on. I can't remember what I used when I knit this up for my knitting expat. Hug, shrug, hug, something like that. That is a garment I wear all the time. This is, being 100% wool, is suitable for projects that you can put heat on. Do not use acrylic for anything you're planning to put something hot on. Acrylic is essentially plastic, it will melt. So yeah, use a cotton or a wool or something like that. Some sort of natural fibre, because that's going to be better for heat protection. Wool is very good at insulating. So I would recommend wool, but if you're somebody who doesn't enjoy working with wool, then a cotton would be a good alternative, or a cotton bamboo, something like that. If you're using a thinner yarn, you probably want to do multiple layers. I'm using quite a chunky yarn, so I'll do one disc up and see how we go. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to create a loop of yarn around our fingers. Just like when I do my slip knots, I always start them with a loop around my fingers. Then I'm going to take my crochet hook. I'm using a 5mm crochet hook for this project. Obviously it depends on your yarn as to what size hook you need. If I wanted a tighter fabric, I would go down a hook size. If I wanted a looser fabric, I'd go up a hook size. So we're going to start by working single crochets, so US single crochets into this loop. In the UK they're called double crochet. So we're going to do 6. So that's 3, and there's 4, there's 5, and here's 6. And this is why the magic loop in crochet is called the magic loop. I'm going to take my tail, I'm going to hold my stitch that's still attached to the hook so that it doesn't like slide around, and I'm going to pull my tail, and there we go. We close up that loop and we end up with a middle to our project that doesn't have a hole in it. I'm now going to slip stitch, making sure I'm holding the working yarn and not the tail, because we don't want to work with the tail, into this first single crochet, making sure I get underneath both legs of the V at the top of a crochet stitch. So the top of the crochet stitch is shaped like that, so it looks like a knitting stitch, and you want to take your yarn underneath both legs of the stitch. So I'm just going to slip stitch in there. And now we're ready to work our next round. So I'm going to chain 1 to give me the height that I need. I'm going to count that as my first stitch. So into the same stitch I'm going to do another US single crochet, UK double crochet. Next stitch around I'm going to do 2 single crochets or UK double crochets, and I'm going to do that all the way around my little disc. So that's going to double the number of stitches that I have. Under both legs of the crochet stitch. The reason I'm doubling the stitches is because otherwise it won't sit flat. So I'm going to be increasing every round, but I'm not going to be doubling every round, because that again will make it curve up into a bowl. So I'm going to slow the rate of decrease, the rate of increase successively as I go spiraling around my disc. Oh, off there. There we go. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Have a look. So now we've got 12 stitches, and we're going to continue working our way around. We're just going to spiral out, but each time we go up a layer we're going to need to change our increase rate. So we're going to single crochet for US terms, double crochet into the next stitch, and then the one after that we're going to work 2 again. So we're going to increase by 6 this round. One into the next stitch, 2 into the one after, and we should end up with 18 stitches at the end of this round. You'll notice I didn't do a chain from the first round into the second round, and that's because I'm working in a spiral. If I was working in rounds, I would need to chain to lift the stitch up to the next round. You can of course use a stitch marker to help you keep track of your rounds. I'm just sort of winging it. If you're regularly counting your stitches, you're going to keep track of where you are. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. So now we're going to work 2 in, so 1 in the next, 1 in the one after that, and 2 in the one after that. So single crochet 2, and then single crochet 2 into the next stitch. So we're increasing every third stitch. Essentially, you're going to keep going in the same way until your disc is as big as you want it to be. So each round you're going to increase the number of single crochet, double crochet stitches into individual stitches between the increases by 1. So my next round will be 3, the one after that will be 4, and so on, until the disc is as big as you want it to be. So I'm going to keep going with that and come back to you at the end. Okay, so I've done a few rounds. I've got to the point where between each increase has been 4 stitches. As you can see, it's sitting fairly flat and it's curling up slightly at the edges, and that's more to do with my tension than anything else. If you do find it's curling up too much and you can't make it sit flat, you can change your rate of increase. So it's curling up at the moment because I'm crocheting quite tight, but the middle is sitting nice and flat. So instead of doing 5 between each increase, I'm going to do 6 just to ease that out a little bit. I'm only going to do a couple more rows for this particular one. It occurs to me though that some of you might be really new to crochet, so you might not know what I mean when I say US term single crochet, UK term double crochet. It's the same stitch, it's just different terminology. So with a loop over your hook, so either because you've chained, which is just pulling the yarn through once, or because you've worked another stitch, you're going to take your hook through underneath those 2 legs of the top of the next stitch, grab the yarn with the hook and pull it back through, so you've got 2 loops on your hook, and then you're going to pull it through once more. So to show you that again, put the hook through underneath both legs of the V at the top of the stitch, pull the loop through and pull it through again. So the third time, underneath both legs of the V at the top of the stitch, grab the yarn, pull it through, grab the yarn, pull it through both loops. There's number 4, 2 loops on the hook, pull it through, and number 5, under both legs, 2 loops on the hook, pull it through. And then the next stitch you do that twice. So hook underneath both legs, grab the yarn, pull it through, grab the yarn, pull it through, and then again into the same stitch. So you can see where that one's coming out. We're going to put the hook back through there again, grab the yarn, pull it through, and grab the yarn, pull it through. Okay, so I'll just do, I said I was going to do 6, didn't I? This is the good thing about crochet. Take my hook out, pop, pop, there we go. We'll do our 6 single crochet there, and then our increase of 2. Okay, so under, through, through, under, through, through. So yeah, so I'll just work another couple of rows and come back to you again, and I'll show you how I'm going to make the final touches to this particular project. Okay, so I'm quite happy with the size of that. If I just grab a mug, I can see it is a bit bigger than the mug, so it'll make a good coaster. If you wanted to turn this into a basket, you would continue making rounds without increasing, and that's going to raise the sides up. If you wanted to make it a placemat, you just keep going until it's as large as you want. You see these middle rounds are now starting to sit flat. Still a little bit of a lift at the side, but I'm not worried about that. It's outside the size of the mug. So that's basically how you make a disc. I'm just going to do a little bit of finishing off to make it look a little bit pretty. I mean, obviously I will need to weave in some ends ultimately, but there we go. So I'm just slip stitching into the next stitch, and now I'm going to do a crab stitch around the outside. So a crab stitch is the same as a single crochet, but you're going in the other direction. So rather than going into this stitch, I'm going to go into this stitch. pull the yarn through. It can be a little bit more fiddly, this one. Just bear me a moment as I just reorganise myself because I've lost a loop. Okay, so that's me back through my slip stitch. Okay, so I take my hook underneath the two legs of the previous stitch, grab the yarn, and pull it through. I've now got 2 loops on my hook. You can see them there. And I'm going to pull the yarn through again. And I'm going to do that all the way around. So, under both legs of the previous stitch, pull the yarn through, and pull the yarn through both loops. Okay, so I'm just going to do that all the way around, and come back to you when it's done. Okay, so I'm almost at the end of my crab stitch round. So I'm just going to do the last few stitches. You will not be able to slip stitch your last crab stitch to your first one. Seriously, save yourself a headache, don't even try. There we go, one there. Sometimes it can be a little bit fiddly, particularly when you manage to split the yarn like I just did there. So there you go, it's easy enough to sort yourself out. Crochet is incredibly forgiving. Okay, so here's my last crab stitch. So all I'm going to do is pull the loop through, take my hook out, sure I've got enough to thread a needle, snip, and pull that out. I always pull the side nearest the skein or the ball of yarn when I'm pulling my loops out, just to make sure that I don't accidentally undo the stitch. Okay, so there we have our finished coaster. You can see the edging that this crab stitch gives, and it is going to sit a little bit proud from the surface, but that's okay because it was nestled the mug nicely in. There again, you can see it's just showing around the outside of the mug there, so you've got the edging coming up, so the coaster is a little larger than the mug, which is what you want. Okay, so the only thing that remains to do is to weave in these ends. So I'm just threading up a yarn needle, and I like these ones with the bent end. As you can see, this one's been used a fair bit because the coating's coming up. Okay, so the crab stitch end, the finishing end, I am going to actually weave in through the back of the first crab stitch to join those two together, and then I'm just going to work my way down through these stitches a little way. I know that this particular yarn, being a pure 100% Shetland yarn, will felt together in time, which does make weaving in ends a little bit easier because you can do a little bit more slapdash. But I'm just going to work it through a few stitches. And let's just pop it back there. It's not going to be getting lots of heavy use in terms of moving it around a lot and being a coaster, so that's fine. So that's that one done. So we'll snip that end off. And then the starting end, I seem to have a knot in there, so I'm going to cut that off because that won't thread through the needle very well. But knots happen in yarn, it's not a problem. I do find that the crab stitch just gives a nice sort of finished edge to things. So I'll show you that again in a second. I'm just weaving this starter end again just through the stitches. I literally just shove it in anywhere. As long as it's not showing through on the front, you're fine. So if you wanted to use this for a pot holder, you could make a larger disc, perhaps in a thinner weight yarn, do 2 layers, and use the crab stitch to join the two layers together. If you wanted to use it as a trivet, then obviously you need to make sure it's big enough to fit underneath your pans. If you want to use it as a placemat, then yeah, just make it big enough to go underneath your plates. So it's a nice versatile little project. And there we go, the middle, all the single crochet, double crochets are sitting nice and flat, and the crab stitch around the outside is just giving it a little bit of interest. I could block it and press it down, but I actually quite like having it coming up the side of the mug. So yeah, so we've got a little bit of an edge, but that I'm happy with. Okay, so that is my coaster. So I hope you found that useful and interesting. I'm going to go and use my coaster with a cup of tea, just like this. Obviously not holding it like that because that would be silly, but yeah. Let me know down in the comments if you're going to be making a coaster or a placemat or a trivet or whatever with this project. As I say, it is a very versatile project. And give me a like and subscribe if you've enjoyed spending some time in my company. I aim to put a video up every weekend. It's normally on a Saturday. Occasionally technology lets me down and it trickles over into Sunday, but it's usually Saturday. Once a month is a roundup of the things that I've been making in the previous month, and other times it's more like this video where I'm going through a project that I've done or a technique or that kind of thing. So I look forward to seeing you in the next video, but until then, happy crafting and bye bye for now.